Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Pei Zayin Amud Aleph at the new Mishnah, the new Perek. The 8th Perek opens up by discussing the Korban Pesach, and we know that the Korban Pesach, if a person wants to fulfill his mitzvah of Korban Pesach and eat from the Korban Pesach, he must be included in the Chabura of that Korban Pesach from the time of the Shechita. He can only be included in one Korban Pesach. What is the din if two people shecht on behalf of one person? Says the Mishnah, Ha'isha bizman shehi bebeis bailo. When a woman, at the time that she is in her husband's house, shochat aleh bailo v'shochat aleh aviha. When both her husband and her father separately shecht a Korban Pesach on her behalf. What is the din, says the Mishnah? Toichal mishel baila. The assumption is that she wants to be included in her husband's Korban Pesach. So unless she states otherwise, we assume that indeed the husband's Korban Pesach was on her behalf and she was included in that. That was her das. Says the Mishnah, Holcha regel rishon la'asos beis avia. The first Yom Tif is Pesach, and there's newlyweds, and they go to her father's house. It states over here, Shochat alel avia v'shochat alel baila. If both her father as well as her husband shecht the Korban Pesach on her behalf, the din is toichal b'makom shehi roitza. She can eat the Korban Pesach depending on which one that she desired. The Mishnah goes on to say, Yasoim sheshachtu alov apitropisin. If there's a Yasoim who was appointed apitropisin and both apitropisin shecht a Korban Pesach for this Yasoim, the din is yoicha b'makam shu roitze. He can choose to then eat to which one, to be included in whichever one that he will wish. In other words, they both shecht on behalf of the Yasoim, and the Yasoim, it's chal al tnai, that whichever one he will eat from, that was then the Korban Pesach that was shechted on his behalf for, that he's included in. The Mishnah concludes, Eved shechnei shutfin, if there's an Eved knaini, we're talking about an Eved knaini who was nitbal, he went into the mikvah, he had bris milah, so therefore he has a din as chayv and mitzvahs kenoshim, and he's owned by shnei shutfim, both shutfim, and they both shecht the Korban Pesach on his behalf. So lo yoicha mishel shneim, here it says he does not eat from either one. Why? Because each one is makpid that the other one doesn't have the Korban Pesach for him. And therefore, although each one shechts on his behalf, he thinks that the other owner, the other shutaf, is not makpid, but indeed he is makpid. So therefore, the Eved cannot eat from either Korban Pesach, since he belongs to both of them. Mishechetzio, Ev v'chetzio ben chorin. The last din in the Mishnah is when one had an Eved Ivri, and they were by Shushutfin, and one was Meshachrer, the Eved, not Eved Ivri, Eved Knani rather, and he was Meshachrer, so that the Eved now is Chetzia Even Chetzed ben Chorin. So it says, Lo yoichal mishel rabbi, he shall not eat from his master's Korban Pesach, because the assumption is that the Korban Pesach that the master shechted was only for the fact that the part that he was his Eved, but he wasn't then including him as the ben Chorin, and therefore it's not going to be valid. The Gemara makes the following diuk, because the second din in our Mishnah stated that when the newly married couple goes to her father's house, and he shechts a Korban Pesach for her, and her husband shechts a Korban Pesach for her, it states in the Mishnah, the din is that she then chooses which one she desires. It states in the Mishnah, Toichal b'makom shehi roitze, she eats the Korban Pesach that she will desire. So the Gemara says, Shmas mina yesh breira. We can derive from this that there is breira, that there is the retroactive clarity that we're able to define, clarify what it is that she intended b'shas the shechita, because you have to then be included in the chabur b'shas shechita. And here the Gemara assumes that here we're talking about even afterwards, b'shas the achila, and she's able to choose which one she wants to be included in with. So it must be that limafreya, we say breira, that it becomes clarified that she wanted to be included in her father's Korban Pesach, rather in her husband's Korban's, whichever one she chooses, either her father's or her husband's Korban's Pesach, retroactively. Now this is a chiddush because we say when it comes to Torah halacha, Torah din, we don't say breira, and yet over here the Gemara is medayek that since she can choose either her father's or her husband's Korban Pesach, b'shas the achila, that we must say breira, that it was chal breira lemafreya from the time of the shechita. The Gemara said no. My rotze, what does it mean that she's roitza? B'shas shechita. We ask her b'shas the shechita that she want to be included in her husband's Korban Pesach or her father's Korban Pesach. Raminu asked the Gemara, we have a challenge from the following brisa. Isha regel harishon oichel mishal aviyah. Here it states the first Yom Tif, which is Pesach, she eats the Korban Pesach from her father, which means, unlike the Mishnah, our Mishnah says that she chooses which one she wants to eat from her father's or her husband's. The brisa goes on to say mikan ve'elach, but subsequently roitza oichelish mishal aviyah, roitza mishal baila. She can choose which one she desires to then be included in, her father's Korban Pesach or her husband's Korban Pesach. This also contradicts our Mishnah, because our Mishnah is mashma that after the first regel, then she certainly will eat the Korban Pesach of her baila. The Gemara focuses on the steer from the first part, where we stated in our Mishnah that the first regel she can choose which Korban Pesach to be included, and yet in this brisa it says that she included in her father's Korban Pesach. Answers the Gemara, Lokashio kan redufa leilech kan b'she'ena redufa. The case in the brisa is talking about where she's redufa, she's very eager to then be included in her father's Korban Pesach, therefore she is included in that, whereas in the Mishnah, where she doesn't visit her parents very often or very much, certainly not in the beginning even of the marriage. So then when the Pesach comes out as a first Yantif, she's not redufa, she's not eager necessarily, and therefore a Mishnah says she's right, so she can choose which one she wants to be included, her father's or her husband's. Dichsi, the pasuk brings, Oz hayisi be'einav k'moitzas sholem. The pasuk states, then I was in his eyes. This is Klal Yisrael saying that I was in the eyes of Hashem. K'moitzes sholem, like one who found perfection. Hashem found perfection in Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan expounds this pasuk, and he says, "Kekala shemoitzes shlema bebeis chamiha," like a bride who finds perfection in her father-in-law's house. And she then is eager to go to her father's house to express the praise that she received from her father-in-law's house. Gemara brings a pasuk ksiv. It states, "V'haya bayoim hahu ne'um Hashem," and it will be on that day. Hashem said, "Tikri ishi v'lo tikri li oid baili." Call me ishi, and don't call me baili. Ishi, it means my husband in a more intimate way. And no longer you will call me Baili, my husband, my master. Rabbi Yochanan explains, Kekala bebeis chameha, like a bride in the house of her father-in-law, v'lo kekala beis aviyah, and not like the kala in her father's house. That means that after, in a subsequent stage of marriage, Erisin begins with her father's house, but it becomes then in her father-in-law's house, meaning when she gets to the stage of Nisuin, she leaves her father's house. Pasuk states, Achois lonu ketano, v'shodayim ein lo. Our sister is still young, and her breasts are not ripened, are not mature. Rabbi Yochanan expounds this pasuk, Zu Elam. This refers to the area, the Medina of Elam. Shezochsa lilmov lezochsa lilamed. This is a reference to Daniel, who was zoichet to learn Torah, but was not zoichet to teach the Torah to the populace. Ani choimo v'shadai kimigdolos. I am a wall, and my breasts are like towers. Omar Rav Rabbi Yochanan ani choimo. He expounds the words ani choimo in this pasuk. I am like a wall. Zu Torah. The Torah protects like a wall. V'shadai kimigdolos, and my breasts are like towers. Eilu talmidei chachamim, referring to talmidei chachamim who expound the Torah, who teach the Torah, who give nourishment to the Klal Yisrael, to teach the Torah to others, including their own learning, which is nourishing the populace. V'Rava Amar, and Rav expounds differently. Ani choimo, I am a wall. Zu Knesset Yisrael. This is Knesset Yisrael. This is their characteristics of being a choima, that they protect themselves from the assimilation of other nations. V'shadai kimigdolos, and my breasts are like towers. Elu bote Knesset bote midrashos. The tefillah and the Torah that is learned in the bote midrashos, and the Torah and the tefillah that is davened, that is prayed in the bote knesios, that provides a nourishment for the Klal Yisrael's protection from the other nations. Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amar Rav. My dichsiv, what's meant in the following verse? Asher b'neinu kinetim. Our children are like saplings, migudolim b'neurehem, who grow in their youth. B'noiseinu kizavios, nechutovois tavnis heichal. Whereas our daughters are like the corners that are crafted, just like the structure of the Beis HaMikdash. Asher bonenu kinetim, our children, our sons are like the saplings. Elu bachure Yisrael shelotamu tam chet. These are the youngsters, the bachurim of Yisrael, who then are so pure they haven't tam chet. That's like the saplings who are still pure, haven't even developed, and are unaffected by anything else. That's the purity of the Bachure Yisrael. Benosem kizavios. The daughters are like corners. Elu besulois Yisrael sha'agudois Psachim leba'alehen. They are like the besulois of Klal Yisrael, who close their openings for their husbands. Says Rashi, sha'agudois Psachim leba'alehen. What does it mean that they close their openings for their husbands? They make sure that they're pure until they have their own husbands. They don't have any relations with anybody else. Loshen Acher, Rashi brings another explanation. Shemagidois, Agudas Loshen Shemagidois, they tell Pischein shel nida leba'alein lifrosh mehen. They reveal to their husbands that they're in a state of nida, despite the fact that they desire their husbands. They still then desist to then explain to their husband that they're prohibited to be with their husbands. And similarly it states, Umalu kamizrak bezavyois mizbeach, and they are like filled. They will be filled like a bowl, like the corners of a mizbeach, and that's a reference to the fact that they are filled up with desire. Nonetheless, they are like the corners of a mizbeach, and they hold themselves back until they're able to be with their husbands. Ibois emo mehacha. Others say you can learn from the following verse: Mizavenu, even from our corners, mileim, they're still filled. Referring to the fields, the corners are filled. Mefikin mizan el zan. They provide from one harvest to the other harvest. So these are reference to the Benois Yisrael, who are filled up with desire. Nonetheless, they wait for their husbands. Michutovois tavnis heichal. This goes back to the pasuk that we brought before, that states that they are crafted into the into the structure of the Beis Hamikdash. Eilu ve'eilu ma'ale alem hakasav ki'ilu nivna heichal b'meim. Eilu ve'eilu, these referring to the Bachurim, ve'eilu, and those Besulois that we just mentioned before in Klal Yisrael. Ma'ale v'kasuv, the Torah compares them, ki'ilu nivna heichal b'meim, as if they built a mikdash in their lifetime, because since the mikdash is the source of kedusha, our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world, so too the Bachurim and Besulois in Klal Yisrael, they have built a mikdash of kedusha in their days.